So, some context here. On the alpha side of this, we're gonna review this match. This was posted in ACD a little under a week ago, and the context of this is that there was a conversation regarding like high level meta builds, and Stryder, one of the best players in the world, easily probably the best Zim Shield in the world. It was recently kind of gotten in the boat and other builds just to kind of deal with the ennui that he's had to deal with. It was kind of like he was lamenting the fact that at least as far as he's concerned, that Lamb, especially Blue Lamb, Nehru Lamb, also known as it's called, or 20B Lamb, is kind of a hard counter into Zim Shield because of the wiggling that it does. Really makes it hard to land shots. It just doesn't have the stats to stand up to to both catch and stand up to a Lamb, because the nebula behind 20B is just an absolute gross amount of damage, and shielding it only takes care of like the initial hit. The cloud of purple is still going to do like a good 15 to 2k damage on you, and even with pretty decent EN defense. And most high level builds stack EN defense because LRBs and nebulas hurt a lot. But even with all that, he felt like it wasn't enough. Even though he could probably reach number one just on a Zim Shield, it was always just really difficult. So he kind of didn't like it. And then someone in ACD, I can't remember exactly who, mentioned that Toku Robo, as a build, actually kind of counters Lamb. Now we're gonna take a look over here before we get in the actual match review to kind of explain it. He is on the leaderboard. So here is Stryder. And this is the Toku Robo he ended up picking up. This is pretty standard Toku Robo now. It's changed a little bit. It originally started out as like pretty light arms that held a LARP and an Etigen. That overburdened the arms because it didn't really affect it very much for what it wanted to do. And it stacked heavy on stats. It used a very high neutral speed booster. It used the shield. The idea was the Etigen would provide steady damage and stagger buildup while the LRB was burst, and sometimes it'd have an orbit for additional stagger buildup. Sometimes it would use a missile. Almost always a shield. Almost always like good neutral boosting booster. This is the current iteration. It uses a ducket. Ducket is quite a lot of stagger buildup. A lot of people are kind of like hyper focused on dual ducket, but one ducket does a lot of work all by itself. And it's a lot of accumulated stagger that builds up very, very quickly if multiple shots hit. If you empty out the magazine, most anything is going to be staggered or very close to it. And you throw in some missiles and an LRB. LRB does a fair amount of stagger. Not a whole lot compared to like kinetic weapons, but enough that it would definitely packs in with it. And the way Toku typically works is kind of like a mirror to Zim Shield. Zim Shield is a CQC build that can kite. Toku Robo is a kite build that can CQC. There's slight differences. Like typically you don't want to go in with Toku Robo. You want to get AP lead and you want to be backing up with the SPDs and using like neutral movement and good shielding while people run into your duckets and run into your LBs. But it absolutely can brawl and brawl very well because, again, duckets are very strong weapons. LRBs hurt a lot. And while it's not exactly ideal and will lose against some builds like that, it is more than enough for a lot of cases, right? But if you look at it, SPD is not the most AB efficient thing. It's especially not efficient for QBs. 20B is a very strong generator for shooting things with lasers, and an okay generator. Otherwise, it's not really the kind of thing you really want to bring into a LAM matchup. So it really is a question in the West, not so much in JP, where Toku Robo and LAM are a lot more commonly played. So it really just came down to a question of whether or not Toku Robo was an actual counter. So Stryder put together a Toku Robo, and he queued into rank, and the first person, literally the first match of ranked he played on Toku Robo was against Goma. Goma, I think, is either on an all or has changed his name. But Goma requires no introduction in most cases. He is is the JP Lamb. He has been the JP Lamb for a long time, usually hovering around top 10 spots unless he decides to try another build, then he might fall a couple places, but his like overall competency and skill in the game is enough that even trying other builds, he really doesn't fall too far. This is a little bit different than what he matched into the Stryder with. With Stryder, he had a split missile and a coral missile. I don't know what head he had because we'd have to go over the video for that. But the build itself is pretty much the same. 20B, P10 because hover speed and all that doesn't really matter. You just kind of want the efficiency and low EN cost. The hover speed is going to be about the same regardless, and typically you don't want a QB unless you have to. So. But Goma's, one of the main things you do on Nero Lamb is you don't really rely too much on just your FCS. Salt is kind of an okay FCS, but you don't really use it for a whole lot. There's no like firearm proficiency on Basho of all things, so it's really just used for the lightweight and good stats. So what Goma and what Nero Lamb aims to do is mostly it tries to maim its shots. It stays pretty far away, or at least a fair amount of distance. It tries to hit you with maim nebulas and maim explosive throwers. Just like chunk full amounts of damage. Get a stagger. Try to time a stagger right when the coral missile is coming in behind you or into you. So if you get hit by the explosive thrower stagger, you'll eat the missile, probably be standing in a cloud of purple, and virtually all your AP will disappear very quickly. It is very difficult to understate just how much burst damage this build actually has while being way high up in the air with decent stability. But there are two main weaknesses to Lamb that are, even though they are weaknesses, they're very difficult to exploit for most builds. One is that Lamb play tends to be fairly flowcharty and predictable. You want to get in the skybox, you want to get in the air, and you want to hit maims. You don't want someone to be on you, and the whole time they're coming towards you, you don't really QB. You're just wiggling. You're hitting AD, you're hitting back and forth on the controller, trying to which is not quite disrupting the FCS as much as exploiting the FCS, because the FCS is a predictive system. But the acceleration in this game is such that if you accelerate very quickly in one direction, the FCS will predict where you're going to be, fire a weapon in that direction, but because you hit left on that controller, you're now accelerating in the other direction, so shots tend to go wide side to side when you're wiggling. That's why with Lamb, you typically want to be directly in their face in order to land shots, and you'll see a lot of that. Like Kite into Lamb tends to be kind of a weird matchup. Even Kite, a double Lamb matchup with a lot of wiggle, it's very difficult. It really just comes down to who lands the most missiles and who actually hits their main shots. And I'm sure Goma has been in enough Lamb mirrors that he understands that matchup very well. But this was not a matchup that Stryder understood very well, because this was all just a thing he just found out this day. So this is Stryder's literally first PvP game in ranked against the best Lamb on a build he's unfamiliar with, into a map that sort of favors Lamb. Contaminated. I think this is Contaminated City B. Contaminated City B does tend to favor Lamb a little bit, especially depending on where they're going. There are very few terrain features that get in their way. Even a couple that are high enough that if they're savvy, they can actually exploit. Like the two towers to the left here. There's a tower to the right here. They can kind of hover around to block other main nebulas or things like that. Or if they're really close to it, they can land on it, gain some EM back, and be back in the air, virtually no EM spent whatsoever, and could stay in there effectively forever. Good Lamb players almost never touch the ground. If they do touch the ground, it has to be a safe spot, or they fucked up and they're dying. So that's where we're at. So we're going to start. It is also important to note that Stryder starts in the alpha position and Goma starts in the beta position. On this map, there's very little actual difference. You see here, we'll point it out here as the phase starts. I also started about half speed, so we can comment on it as it keeps going. but let's see if we can see it here. So, shit, hang on. Just accidentally hit the wrong button. Oh, what do we show you? Well, so this building right here, this is actually a pretty good building to get to like take cover. I tend to make use of it. Not a lot of people tend to. Stryder's not going to make use of it this match. And I wouldn't want to do it on Alpha because you're just a little bit further away than Beta is. If you start on Beta, you can run to this for cover. If you start on Alpha, you're going to try to get cover. The cliff over here may be a little bit better, or if you really just don't want to get close, these buildings over here will also suffice. If you're not looking for cover, or if you're trying to get close before taking it, this building will work out. But Stryder doesn't go for it because he'd just rather dodge the maims. So you're going to see he stops here. He waits to get a full bar before he starts chasing. That's kind of important. It's tempting for a lot of players to just AB, 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 or AB, QB to try to shuffle and get there as quickly as possible. But 20B doesn't give him the luxury. If he had a better generator, he might have done that. Like, he'd get himself to about down here rather than here, but 20B is kind of slow to regenerate instead. And one of the main things he's looking for right off the bat is he's looking for Goma to maim. He's looking for a maim shot. That's, like I said, it's very flowcharty. First thing a lamb wants to do is they're going to get up in the air, they're going to find a spot where they feel comfortable, and they're going to shoot you from outside of lock-on range. And that's exactly what Goma has done here. So yeah, he shuffles to the point, gets about half his bar gone, he feels comfortable stopping, he waits for the shot, and he tries to get out of the way. Doesn't take any depth damage, and then there's the split missile. And tries to dodge that as well. Now here's an important thing a lot of people miss. So he doesn't focus on Goma at all. He actually takes his lock off of Goma and he faces the coral missile, and the reason for that is the coral missile is a source of a lot of burst damage off of a lamb. If you can disarm that immediately, which he does, he flies into it, he flies around it. If you're within, I think, coral missile is about 10 meters. At about the 10 meter mark, the coral missile will stop locking onto you and will just go straight into you, or try to. And if you get around it or dodge around it, like he actually went behind it in this case, it'll actually not take any damage at all. So he does that. And it's important to do that in a lamb matchup, especially with a coral missile, because that represents like a good third, if not half, their damage altogether. If they stagger you and that coral missile hits, the match is pretty much over. That is the punish. The punish is already in the air. And on top of being a punish, it's a good poke, it's a good harasser. Kites don't like it being chased by lamb. The little bits that come off of it as it's coming towards you represents extra damage, so it even gets more damage as it's coming in on you. But yeah, he gets rid of it, and again, he doesn't red line. He goes up until he red lines, and then he has his shield. Now, this is also kind of a problem with narrow lamb, or lamb in general. You notice that he gets up there, and even though he parries this nib shot, he still eats like 700 damage just sitting in the cloud. And the ET hasn't come out yet. But you see where he's at right now. He spent all his EN just getting to him, and now he's directly under him. And Toku has a lot of neutral speed. This is like 400. Going backwards, Lamb is about 370. So he's already just this little bit pretty fast. He's ABing back up. And he's not trying to kick him. Goma's trying to wiggle. Goma's doing everything he's supposed to be doing, but he's not getting the distance on this Toku. The Toku's just in his face, bumping him. And another thing here is he didn't ignore the coral missile that was already fired. Likely, I think, go back a little bit. It's hard to see through all the purple. See, he knows the coral missile's there. He makes note of it. His stagger is pretty high. And he decides, rather than get staggered or hit by the coral missile, he's just going to pop his PA. He'd rather take the PA than take all the damage, because Goma here is still pretty high on stagger. He hasn't been able to get away and reset. And here you see Goma get staggered. He got greedy on his PA, and he takes a lot of damage. I don't even know here, because when I kept rewatching this, I was trying to see where the larb hit, because you see he takes like 2,000 damage here. Like the ducket hits. I think that last one was a larb hit. Let's see, 100. Yeah, I think that's where the larv hits, right there. Yeah, duck it. I don't know if that was a larv hit, because that was 1180 right there. I don't know if the duck it hit the red line and then the larv hit, or the larv hit and the duck it hit the red line. Or they both hit at the same time, but a kick gets a good deal of damage in. So, what's important about this is also Stryder's just exercising a skill you don't see in lower ranks, even like under top 100 or even in the top 100. He's exercising a little thing called patience. He knows the missile's there. He's going to take the time. He's just going to, disarm the missile, take a little bit of damage from the little shitlings. It can't be helped. And he's not trying to go in, because Lamb's greatest strength is when you're going in. And you see, even though he's got the AP lead, even though he had Goma on the back foot the entire time, and Goma really wasn't dodging, Nebula and Explosive Thrower by itself, along with the split missiles hitting you in the butt, even with the parrying that he was doing, he was taking all that damage. He started at like 1100 or 11,000 AP, and now he's down to 4,000. It's actually going to get much, much lower here, you're going to see in a second, with just very few shots. That, like I said, Lamb is kind of seen as this really funny kite, but the burst damage is so much that if a Lamb knows how to brawl you, chances are not zero that they can win off of that, off the damage of like a Nebula on 20B, or even Nebula on Coral. Coral Gen back in the day was still like a positive energy damage until they nerfed it a little bit. But moving on, so Stryder's basically doing one thing right now. He's just playing defensive. He's dodging through the missiles. He's getting in range to fire his own missiles, and he's backing up. Because then there's no reason for him to go in, no reason for him to waste the in, no reason for him to take a unnecessary nab. You see, Goma was trying to catch him with a maimed Nebula. This was not a lock-on Nebula. You can see right here. See, he goes off. He goes off to the side. Yeah, he goes off to the side. See, Goma was trying to predict where he's going on the ground. So if Stryder hung out longer there, he might have ate a neb to the face and just took like a shit ton more damage. But yeah, he fires his Nebula. He dodges underneath it. Gets a little bit closer. Again, he's still not chasing. He sees the Coral Missile come out here. Now this is really smart for both players, and I'm going to explain why here in a second. So Stryder takes his vision off of Goma. Right, you saw Goma kind of skitter off to the left here. Goma is not a dumb player. Goma is a very smart player. Goma has seen Stryder turn all his attention to the Coral Missile twice now and go into it. Actually, I think this is the third Coral Missile he does exactly that too. So what Goma's going to do is he's going to sneak around here and he's going to put Stryder in a dilemma. He can either get hit in the back by this Coral Missile, or risk getting hit in the back with this Coral Missile, or he could take his eyes off Goma, dodge the Coral Missile, and Goma will be like within ET and Nebula range. And you're going to see exactly what happens here. So he's going to go in, he actually turns back into Goma right as the missile goes by. And you see Goma here, he's already aimed. I don't know if this is an aimed ET or a maimed ET, but if you go just like a couple, yeah, you see he takes like that full amount. That's just like straight up, I think with the little shitling off there, that's like full 1,000 damage, and that's like a third of the way back to where, Goma can get the AP lead again. And he's got his Nebula charge, so this is actually pretty hazardous, because he can't really stop ABing, or he's going to fall down, lose speed, and Goma's going to hit him with another neb, probably on the ground, or another ET, again, while he's on the ground, and it's harder for him to dodge, and probably die at that point, because the burst damage is going to be so high. So he doesn't really have much choice but to go in and finish the fight if he can. And you see all this shit kind of going around Goma, because he's not quite within, like, Ocelots range. There's that Nebula here. I don't remember if he doesn't even shield that. He just takes that full onto the face and eats like 1,200 damage. But it's a calculated risk, because he's already gotten a little bit of damage off, and he doesn't take much. Like Lamb's other way, I talked about how flowchart gameplay was like one of the weaknesses of Lamb. The other weakness of Lamb is that it's effectively made of paper. If they didn't have those tools at their disposal, you can end a fight instantly. Like, I've been in fights on my RJ Zims that ended in just one kick. One kick, 2 Zims, they PA'd, it was too late, they were already falling to the ground, I was already on their ass, and they just got chewed up from there because they couldn't get away at that point. Without being able to get back in the hover mode and back and forth really quickly, it was just me stomping him into the floor. And that happens a lot. If I catch a lamb, the lamb is dead. And the lamb knows this, so they endeavor not to be caught at all times. But you see, this is about over here. So this is the first phase. And I think we're going to see one more shield from Stryder. Yep, I think he blocks the ET, which if the ET hit, that would have absolutely won. He still took a shit ton of damage from that. Like, he took 1,400 from the Neb and the missiles, down from 3,900. Actually, I think that was 1,400 from the ET. He might have failed to parry that, actually. Let's see. No, he parried it. It was just adding up the numbers, so about 200 from the ET. But that almost killed Stryder right there. If he had not parried the ET right there, it would have been over. But at this point, he's already dead. He just explodes at this point. Stryder takes the phase. His first phase ever on Toku. Now his first phase with like a shield into Toku, or into, okay, here we go. We'll get onto this here in a second. This is the other recording. These are all provided by Stryder, by the way, because he posted these in ACD, and I flat out told him what I was going to do, and now I'm doing it. So, here we go. So, we already kind of know how this goes. He's going to shuffle towards him, and this one's going to go a little bit better. Goma has kind of gotten a feel for what kind of Toku player that Stryder's going to be. But at the same time, Stryder is getting a better feel for the build that he's on, because again, he's been told this is an anti-lamb. This favors into lamb. So that's what he's about to do. He's going to test that out. So again, he doesn't spend all his yen. He gets about half bar. Lets it regen. He dodges the initial lead. So the coral missile doesn't come out immediately. He just red lines to try and get out of there. Shields to cover the ET. Said no damage, just being patient. Now here's something that's really cool. A lot of people would miss. So this little move right here, right? He sees the coral missile. He knows it's there, and what Goma's going to do, what most good lambs are going to do. Once they launch the coral missile, they're going to rotate out to get the missile out of your view. The missile is somewhere up here, right? Most players are going to hyper focus on him and not turn towards the missile. And of course, Matt Lamb's punished this by firing a neb into your face, like right now. But you see, instead of going forward, if you weren't paying attention, you notice that Stryder is actually moving back. He's moving back until the missile is about back in the view, and he just ABs past it. Goma's no longer in his sight, doesn't need to be in his sight, he knows where Goma's is. There's the ET, here comes that, and that's that. So he's disarmed the missile. He's got to recharge he's got to recharge the nebula, so it gives him time to get his EN back. Of course, he again parries the explosive thrower. Again, he's just parrying the things that he can parry, because he doesn't have to worry about dodging anything as long as his shield is still up. But this time we're going to see... Okay, that's something I missed actually, because I didn't realize. So, when did this happen? When did he fire it? Hang on. Ah, he fired it there, okay. This is just really good fucking awareness, because even if I missed it on a replay, just try seeing this shit when you're like in the game trying to like murder this man with all the buttons saying here, kill this guy, but don't pay attention to the tiny little screaming sun here. But again, Stryder is aware of this. But yeah, he goes in. Even though his stagger's not that high, he knows he doesn't have the time to dodge that coral missile and parry with whatever is coming, so he's just going to opt to burn his PA right away. Coral Missile is going to kind of bounce off the PA. Goma knows from the last match that he's gonna have a hard time getting away from that PA because he's not staggered, he's not recovering from a stagger. He's just already, by the time, because PA puts you, like, sends you to the floor, like, once Stryder hits the ground, he's already regenerating PA, and he's going to get right back in there in Goma's face where he's probably going to lose. So Goma burns his PA. He decides not to greet it this time because eating 2,000 damage on your tiny, frail body is not a good thing for Lamb to do. So he burns his PA. Again, unfortunately, this kind of puts him in a bad spot because now he's standing directly on the floor against the thing with a shield and a LARP. This is a bad spot for a Lamb. A Lamb does not want to be here. So he's going to try to jump up, hit his ET, get back in the air. Thankfully, narrow. Okay, here's another, like, really cool bit. I don't know if this was intentional or not. I'm not entirely sure. This could be just to reorientate himself. But Goma's doing another really common tactic of Lambs that when you get in close to you, if you AB at them, what they'll do is they'll just QB. They'll spend their precious EN bar to QB behind you, force you to stop your AB, and try to punish you either with the Coral Missile that's already in there. In fact, I heard it in the air a second ago. So he was already fired it, I think. Or hit you in the back of an ET or of a Nebula, or just get away in general. Because again, Goma's in a bad place. He's already behind he's way behind on AP. He's behind on stagger. If he doesn't land like a proper punish before Stryder gets back in his face, it's pretty much over. Because the PA is gone. He has spent his first life. He is on life number 2. And while on life number 2, again, Stryder gets up, takes his shots. And I think actually with that disruption, I think Goma might have actually panicked here. Hang on. Because it might be easy to see it. Goma's kind of doing... I think Goma actually panicked a little bit here. Because... yeah, those are QBs. He probably burnt all his energy just to do that. Yeah, then he gets staggered, and he dies. Yeah, that was pure panic right there, because typically on Lamb, you're not trying to QB, but he probably felt like he absolutely had no choice. To his credit, he timed those duck shots really well. So again, while this is panic, it's still really disciplined panic. He knew exactly how to time his QBs to dodge those duck shots, but it doesn't really matter. You don't have the bar to dodge those duck shots, stay in the air, and try to get away from Toku at the same time. So Toku's just ridiculous neutral speed really works out for it, and Stryder's excellent EN discipline and his experience in already fighting Lambs and winning on Zim Shield has really paid off for him here. And I should mention, neither of these are bad players. These are both very, very good players, and they played very cleanly. You could argue that Goma is playing in ranked. He's probably not playing to his 100% if he was playing the tournament, or if he was taking the match very seriously. Who knows? It might have been still very early in the morning or very late at night for Goma. We can say all that for Goma if we wish, but I'd like to reiterate, this is Stryder's first game on Toku ever. He's never played another person. I'm not even sure if he took this in the tester. He just walked into this game and he pooped on Goma 2-0. That's all there is to it. Does it mean Goma's a bad player? No, absolutely not. I think he played very well. I just think it's very difficult if we talk about Toku as an already good into Lamb build, and if we talk into Stryder already having a lot of experience being able to sit in front of a Lamb and just shoot them to death while parrying all their attacks, then yeah, Toku's a perfectly good option. It's just a matter of experience, and it probably helps, especially with Blue Lamb now being more popular than the old NGI Lambs. Is since Blue Lambs don't skybox nearly as much because they don't have the bar to do it, and 2, they don't really need to with the amount of damage they can output. They probably feel just a lot more comfortable being, closer to the ground. Unfortunately, it didn't really work out because again, this is This is the sign of panic here. This is the sign of a man doing everything he can not to die when he's QBing. So, yep. But that'll do it. And again, not bad. Like, Goma, I think, did everything he could do in this situation. Could he have done a little bit better? Maybe. What? I don't have the experience on Lamb. I think if he had the distance, he could have thought about a little bit more and kind of what he did in the first phase. Because I think in the first phase, Stryder was trying to get used to it. So Stryder ended up eating a lot of damage he didn't need to. I think this is where he really started to eat shit. Because he ate a lot of net damage here. It wasn't like parallel to him because I think Goma was higher in the sky. And again, it's not like Stryder isn't defending himself. He's parrying all these attacks, but there's just a lot of damage. Is this still the second phase? No, this is the first phase. So yeah, like, there's just so much, like, how do I put this? There's so much, like, secondary damage coming through that can't be dealt with by the shield. Of course, he flies with that ET. But what can he do? Like, he's already got the stagger. He's way ahead on it. You know, this is just a case of where Stryder has to be aggressive if he wants to take it. I am curious, though, what would have happened if, instead of backing off here, if Stryder kind of went in. Maybe he would have lost because then he'd probably be eating more ETs and maybe, like, been behind on stagger. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how that would have went. We saw how it went, though. But it did give Goma time to think and figure out his approach, and I think he almost won. I think if one or two factors went in Goma's favor here at the end, I think Goma could have taken the first phase and made this like at least a 2-1 game rather than a 2-0. Because this first phase is a lot closer than it looks. Because yeah, Goma considers his approach. He's trying to conserve EN, not trying to blow it all on. Maybe figure out what he's going to do. Of course, he keeps his missile pressure up. Because, you know, if Stryder keeps getting hit by those, he's going to lose the stagger race. Gets on the floor, he gens again. Again, just trying to get to a comfortable height. Releases the Koro missile. Sees that Stryder's going to try to disarm it. Comes in. Sneaks in. Gets a nice little ET off that isn't blocked. Makes him run to the purple cloud. Damn near kills him with another ET. But by then the train is already coming. And that's that. So, for those who are trying to figure out how to like play into Lamb with like a shield-based build, this is kind of how you do it. You just kind of have to sit in their face. It might be a little bit more difficult if you don't have like proper neutral. So you may have to kind of mix in a little bit more AB here and there. You might have to like drop to the ground and try to play more from the ground and kind of jump in their face when the opportunity arises. If you don't have a shield, I do think this match becomes infinitely more difficult because you have to dodge through an ET that can go high vertical or high horizontal against something that you're effectively facing on a 2D plane where you're burning all your energy, or you're flying through the purple cloud of death that does almost its full damage even if you don't get hit by it, and then the whole time you have a slow, sure death missile chasing you the entire time. But again, like, Stryder handles each problem systematically. He already knows what's going to happen. He's just looking for the signs and already knows what he's to do. So you see a Koro missile, you turn into it, you fly into it, you disarm it, and you move on. And that's like several seconds of freedom that you have, because not only then they have to charge the missile back up, the missile has to lock on, which takes more seconds. The missile has to launch, which by that point you should be, seeing it, and then they'll probably try to move out of sight of the missile, or try to move your sight out of the missile if you're locked on, which is the time when you should be returning and dealing with the missile.
If there is a neb, you can either try to fly through it and try not to get hit, or parry it. Either option kind of sucks. Nebula is just a stupid weapon. ET is about the same. You don't want to be on the ground for the ET because people, especially high-level lambs, have learned that you can ET behind people and behind shields, but if you're right in their face, they don't really have the option to do that, so you can just parry that off. Still going to eat about 400 damage and a decent amount of stagger, as we saw here. But, again, better than nothing. You just kind of have to be ready to with the parry. So, yeah, high neutral speed boosters really help here. If you're a lighter AC, that might not hurt. Don't know what to tell you if you're trying to dodge it. If you're trying to dodge an approach, it might be a case where you really just have to stay far away and force them into you, which is not an easy thing either, to be honest, because if they have to push into you, they got the damage to do it. They just don't want to get caught. If they get caught, then they're trying to damage race you or they're trying to get away, and they can't really win a damage race on something made of hopes and dreams. So is Toku Robo like great anti-lam? I think it's great anti-lam if you know what you're doing. I've played Toku in the lam, and if you don't know what you're doing, it's nightmare fuel because you just don't have the EN bar. If they get a big enough life lead, it's going to be rough. And you can see even like in the second phase, like he still takes like almost half of the EN gone, even despite the like massive amount of like shitting on Goma he was doing, especially in the latter half. I don't know what I think Goma was trying his tricks, but Stryder kind of was already aware of what was going on at that point and was just playing on autopilot. He kind of understood how the magic was going. Just get in his face and shoot him with this pistol, with this big gigantic pistol until they die. Yeah, pretty much. I don't even get hit by the head. Just dead ball down. But yeah, like Stryder has like really good patience and fantastic situational awareness. Like he knew where the missiles were coming, even when I was missing them. Just watching the replay, he knew where they were. He just turned to the missile, got rid of the missile, turned back to Goma because he knew where Goma was. Goma was already winding up a smack to the back of his head that still remained because Stryder already knew the plan. This was a unique match to kind of run into because these are two very excellent players in a kind of a unique situation. And Stryder's kind of like giving you, like just showing you how to beat Lamb, especially one of the best lambs out there. It's a blue lamb, but blue lambs are probably the most common ones right now. Stryder is just very patient and deliberate. That's really what it came down to. But yeah, his PA timings are on point. He dodged the missiles systematically. He just parried everything. He still ate shit. Eating shit is what happens against lamb. So with that said,